Well, the Labour MP Tom Harris joins us from Glasgow. And Tom Harris, I don't know if you recognise colleagues in those scenarios. Are you embarrassed when you hear these kinds of conversations?
Well, you know, it's never acceptable to treat members of staff in any kind of abusive way, and no one would seek to defend it. On the other hand, of course, I can recognise the stress that colleagues are under with the new regime. And the question I'd like to ask is, none of my colleagues knew these logs were actually being kept. I don't know of any journalists who knew that this log was being kept. And I do wonder what prompted this Freedom of Information request. I think what we're seeing here is the result of what happens when you spend hundreds of thousands of pounds of taxpayers' money on a media organisation within Ipsa. They've got nothing else to do, so this is what the kind of stuff that they come out with. So,
wait, just to get to the bottom of what you're saying then, you think Ipsa's happy to see this in the public domain? Are you suggesting this was leaked?
Well, it was. We already know that it was actually released to the public under a Freedom of Information request.
But in terms of it being prompted by a leak from within, or what do you think sparked that off?
I'm asking the question of, since nobody, including the MPs concerned, knew of the existence of these logs, I just find it a bit odd that someone suddenly thought out of nowhere at all, let's apply under the Freedom of Information Act for these logs which nobody knew existed. I just find that very odd.
You're talking, I guess, about the process, the way this story's emerged, but it doesn't really justify the level of abuse that we just heard in the last 3 minutes, does it?
No, that's right. Of course not. I mean, and you know, there is actually no excuse for it. However stressful working with Ipsa actually is, and it is very stressful for everyone concerned, there is absolutely no excuse, because these people, especially people who did the induction courses, and I went on one of those induction courses. I had no choice, of course, or else I wouldn't get any expenses paid. These were interns. These weren't even full-time employees of Ipsa. The people who make the rules, the people who have invented this very odd and bewildering computer system, they never speak to MPs. They send out low-paid interns to speak to us, and they don't deserve to be abused in that way at all.
Tom, how many of your colleagues do you think feel this way about Ipsa then?
Oh, the overwhelming majority. I mean, no question, I've not heard a single colleague from any party say anything nice about Ipsa at all. I mean, it is a shocking shambles of an organisation which has been a failing organisation since day one. So,
how can it continue then if there is pretty much a complete breakdown of trust? I mean, you're insinuating or suggesting on some level that Ipsa is quite happy for this to be in the public domain. You say that most of your colleagues hate the system. I mean, it sounds like that's the death knell for Ipsa, doesn't it?
Well, my view, and I've expressed this publicly, is that, you know, when you have a sick building, you don't call in the interior decorators, you call in the demolition people. I mean, let's remember that Ipsa was invented as an opportunity, an attempt, if you like, to draw a line under the expenses saga. And yet here we are in August 2010, and I'm on Newsnight talking about expenses, and I don't want to be on Newsnight talking about expenses. I actually want to get on with my job, and Ipsa has just made it more difficult to do a job if you're an MP.
Well, you say Ipsa has, but you could argue that actually the public listening to this just think absolutely nothing's changed. Here are MPs whinging or swearing about the expenses system again. Yeah. I mean, that's incredibly damaging, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think members of the public, certainly they're not going to feel any sympathy from me or from my colleagues, and we don't expect that. We don't deserve that. This fiasco is of our own making. First of all, in the ridiculous abuses that took place. Secondly, deciding to set up Ipsa as a gut reaction without thinking through the consequences. It was really done as a quick fix to get us through to the general election. It wasn't ever intended in any kind of strategic way to draw a line under this. I don't think the public. Do you give it? If it were up to me, I'd give it to the end of the week, but I think a lot of my colleagues will probably be of the view that we should try to reform it in some way, and it won't be until after the reforms or the attempted reforms have failed that we'll probably come round to abolishing it at some point, I hope, in the next year.
Tom Harris, thanks very much.